What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's design is this really nice hot air balloon design where we've got the sun beaming through the mountains and onto our hot air balloon. There's an included brush in this design which I've popped in the description down below, as well as a link to the palette as well, so you can follow along with the exact same colours. If you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so if you'd like to follow along with some tutorials, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell so you get notified about all my new videos. As always, if you like the video, hit the like button down below, helps the channel out an awful lot. And as always, a huge shout out to my Patreons. I'll throw their names up on the screen now. And if you're interested in some exclusive tutorials just to Patreon users, as well as access to our Facebook group for Patreon users only, hit that link in the description and show your support over there. And with that said, let's get started. So let's create a new canvas. So let's hit the plus in the top right and hit the custom canvas. And we're going to go for 2500 by 2500 and the DPI is set to 300. And once into our canvas, the first thing we're going to want to do is go to our layers. And when we go to our background color, let's select this color here in the bottom left hand corner, and that is our background color ready to go. So let's now go to our colors and let's switch out to white momentarily. So double tap in the top left hand corner to select white. And then let's go to our brushes, and then under calligraphy, we're going to want to use the monoline brush. And it doesn't matter what size your brush is at this point. We can simply, on the new layer 1 that's already present when you open up a new canvas, we're just going to draw a circle on the screen. And then hold your pen at the end to get a perfect ellipse. Then if you pop your finger on the screen, you'll get a nice perfect circle, and something about that size is good. And you can drag and drop your color into that circle. And then as always, let's grab our cursor icon. Let's make sure snapping is turned on. And then let's just drag that into the center of the canvas until we get the two orange lines to let us know it's perfectly horizontal and vertically in the middle of the canvas. Now let's go up to our layers. And let's create a new layer and then tap on that layer and make sure we turn on clipping mask. Now a clipping mask means that you can only paint now within the boundaries of the layer that you'll clip to. For example, if I grab any color here, if I draw a straight line, you see it can only draw within the boundaries of that circle. So what we'll do is we'll go up to our colors and let's select this color here in the bottom left hand corner again. And then on that new layer, continuing with the monoline brush, let's reduce the brush size down to roughly around about 10%. And what we want to do is we want to draw in some mountains down here that just tail off from the top here all the way down towards the bottom and flick outwards. So let's start roughly around about here and just create some nice jagged lines coming down this mountainside like so, and just sort of tailing off as we get around here. Now maybe you could just make that flick up ever so slightly on the bottom left hand corner. And then as always, you're going to want to start from your start point, draw all the way around. You don't have to draw within the circle, but meet up to your end point, and you'll be able to drag and drop your color in like so. Because you created a perfect shape, you can drag and drop the color into it. And let's create then the mountain in behind that. So let's go back to our layers. Let's select layer 1 and create a new layer. And then let's go to our colors and select then the second option on the third row, a slightly lighter blue. And then we're going to repeat the process to an extent, but we're going to create a mountain over on this left hand side instead that tails off down in behind. So I'm going to start roughly here. I want to make sure I create some nice peaks so that when we add our lighting in, it will look really sharp, and we've got a nice surface to bounce off. So I've gone all the way around from my start point. I continued all the way around and then met up and create a perfect shape, and then drag and drop the color in like so. And then what we'll do is we'll go up to our layers and we'll repeat the process to add in our final mountain. So let's go back to layer 1, create a new layer, and then let's go to our colors and then select the third blue on the bottom row. And then same process, but we're going to create our nice big mountain here, and that's where the sun will lay in behind. So we're just going to sort of create a nice really big peak here, and then another one like so, and then all the way up. And something roughly around about that is good. You can drag and drop your color in, make sure to go all the way around and link up your shape, and then drag and drop like so. Now you could go in at this point, maybe add in some extra details in this one, you know, some maybe extra lumps and bumps just to fill out the shape, give it some more detail. Also avoid sort of having quite rounded peaks sometimes because it's not so realistic. So just add in some little extra textures in there, and that will give your mountain a nice textured effect to it. And that's the base of our design. Now I'm actually just going to move mine ever so slightly further down, just into there. And now we want to create a new layer for our hot air balloon, which is going to sit roughly here, but it's not going to be clipped to the circle. We want it to stick outwards, so it's got a nice bit of depth to it. So we're going to go to our layers, and we're going to go to the very top, and we're just going to tap on the plus icon. And then when we go to our canvas, we want to then start with the shape. Now what we can do here is we could go to our spanner. Let's go to our canvas. Let's turn on the drawing guide, and let's edit that drawing guide, and as always use the symmetry option, which is a favorite of mine. And then I'm just going to drag it off to the left hand side, roughly in the position, because it doesn't matter fully, but it just gives us a nice area to start drawing in our color. So I'm going to change the color of the line as well, so I can also see it. So I'm going to make sure it's yellow. And if you can't see the yellow and it's not bright enough or not sharp enough, you can mess with these options down here, and you'll be able to change the visibility of that line on your canvas. So you can nicely see now I've got a quite visible line down the canvas. And we want to make sure our layer is assisted. If it's not, simply tap on it and turn on drawing assist, but it should be. And now we want to draw in our hot air balloon. So the shape we want to try and achieve is a straight line towards the bottom, so we can simply draw that in. And I'll start on one side and meet up to the other. Something like that is good. And now you're going to want to start from the top and then just draw in that shape of the balloon. So let's go a little bit higher. And then you can drag and drop your color in. Now if you're not happy with the initial shape, like for example I'm not happy with the way that this round at the top, it's not a problem. Just go back in and just curve that out and then fill that a little bit in until you end up with a shape like that. And now we've got our hot air balloon. We want to also then create the different dimensions within it. So let's swipe this layer to the left hand side and hit duplicate. And now I've gone to my colors, and I've just picked any random color. It doesn't really matter as long as it contrasts to the original dark one. It could even be green because I slipped on my brush. So let's just drag that in. And then I'm going to grab the cursor and I'm going to use the freeform option, and I'm going to bring the sides in until we end up with sort of a smaller balloon in the center, roughly something like that. And what you want to do is just try and match this dot onto our drawing line as well, so you know it's smack bang in the middle of this particular hot air balloon shape. And I'm just going to bring mine in a little bit more. You can also drag it so that you can see the blue line, and it lets you know that you're perfectly in the middle. And that's good with me, so I'm going to just tap on the cursor and we've got our hot air balloon shape. Now I'm just going to drag in something that's a little bit closer to our palette, just so we've got an idea, but later on we'll change this color to the correct one. And now let's go to our layers again. And we want to draw in the little basket underneath as well. So let's create a new layer. And let's drag that layer underneath our little hot air balloon. Now it may clip like the rest of them underneath, so simply just tap on it and turn off the clipping mask because we don't want that. And let's go to our colors and let's continue with the same color as our hot air balloon. So it's the third color on the third row. And then with our monoline brush, we're just going to reduce it right down to 1%. And first off, we're going to start with the initial strings. So let's just draw a straight line down and a straight line down here. Now you'll notice I've also not done this one here up to the edge, because we're going to create that sort of 3D look to the basket in a second as well. And then let's draw in then this side of the basket as well. So let's just draw in a horizontal line like so and go straight across our two lines. And then we can go down a little bit more and create the sort of side of the basket. Let's go down again. And then let's create that horizontal line just to get this side of the basket nicely filled in, and drag and drop our color in. And then when we zoom out, we've got our little shape ready to go. And now let's just create another layer just so we can keep the layers separate to one another. And then that new layer, just drag it underneath our basket. Again, it may clip, so just tap on it and turn off the clipping mask. And again, just for the sake of being able to see the different shapes, I'm going to pick a random color. So I'm just going to select this color that I used already for the hot air balloon above. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in then the back strings of the basket as well. So draw in that one and then draw in this one as well. Something like that. And then let's draw in this side here. and then just fill in the shape like so. So now we've got our nice side part of our basket, maybe drawing a little bit there, as well as straight across as well. And now we've got our sort of 3D looking little basket, and we can pop our little person in there as well. So let's go to our layers now, and let's create one more layer above this one. So let's go to our colors, and let's select then the original color, so the third one on the third row. And then on this new layer, we're going to want to draw in, and using the symmetry guide, you can then start to just guide yourself as to where the middle is, and something like that is what you're after, just a little tiny little box to an extent. And then let's just draw in a little stick man as well. Now what I've also done and provided is a monoline additional brush. Now this is just basically a very small monoline brush, and you can see that the line is a lot smaller and finer than what you would normally see from this, and it's just so that we can add in some detail here. So all we're going to draw is simply just a little stick person in here. So let's start off with a circle, then let's draw in a sort of neck and then body, something like this, and we can go back in and adjust it in a moment. And let's just draw in a shoulder and then an arm up towards our sort of fire unit there. And something like that is what you're typically after. Maybe you could go in here and just erase sort of the underarm there, a bit more realistic. And you could even just change the head shape if you wanted to. But something like that. I mean, you can see how small this is. It's not really going to be seen too much, but it's just that little extra little detail in there. So now we've got our hot air balloon all done. We've got our mountains all done. We're now in a position where we can start to paint in now the actual colors and start to really flush it out. So now let's go to our layers and let's find our original background circle. And let's drag in the correct color, which is the one that's in the background for the moment. So let's go to our colors and select that, which is the first dark blue here on the third row. Let's drag and drop that in like so. And then what we want to do is we want to go to our colors, and let's select now the sort of cherry pink red that we're going to use for the entire design. So let's select that color. You're going to want to go to your brush library. You're going to want to go to airbrushing and the soft brush. And my brush size roughly going to be about 30%. That's good. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a new layer. And then we're going to want to tap in the middle of the screen until we get a glow like that. Now I use this all the time for the soft glow, and this is now what we're going to use for where we place our sun. We can then start to then use this. So ignoring that for the moment, let's go to our layers and create a new one. Let's go to the colors and select white and double tap in the top left hand corner. Let's revert our brush back to the monoline. So let's go back to calligraphy and then go back to the actual monoline brush. And then you're going to want to draw a circle on the screen. Link up your shape and hold your pen until you get an ellipse, and as always pop your finger on the screen to get a perfect circle. And let's create something like that. Drag and drop the white in, and roughly that's already somewhat in position. I'm just going to adapt it ever so slightly, and that's the position of our sun, which obviously is where all the light's going to start to come from. So we're going to go to our layers now, and we're going to go back to this pink glow that we created. Let's first of all lower the opacity down. Let's go down to 50 just to start, and we may adapt that in a second. Let's go to our cursor icon and switch to the uniform option. And let's just scale that up until what we want to do is we want to make sure the center part of the glow sits just behind our sun. And we want to stretch that out until it somewhat reaches this edge, but enough that it's a little bit subtle. So maybe I'll just expand mine one more time. You might have to zoom out on your canvas, but something like that is pretty good. So you can roughly see this edge here, but enough that it then outlines the rest of the design as well. This way it's nice because it just tails off and you get a nice little smooth transition into the background color. And now we've done our sun, we can also start to then add in the lighting from it. So let's duplicate our sun by swiping it to the left and hitting duplicate. Go to the second one out of the two, and let's go to our adjustments. Let's go to Gaussian blur and layer. Now this will blur that layer underneath, and you can see at the top in a second a little progress bar of how much you're blurring it out. And let's go for something roughly around about, let's go for 17%, something like that, and just tap on the adjustments when you're done, and you get a nice little glow in behind here. And now you'll want to use the brush that I've provided in the description down below. Now, if you've imported it, it will go into the imported section. Mine is in a different area, so let me just find mine. So now you've got your dust brush as provided in the description. You're going to want to go to our colors and let's select the cherry red pink. And let's start adding in that nice little dust particle effect in the design. So let's go to our layers. We want to create a new layer and then drag that layer underneath the white glow that we just created. And now we're just going to add a little bit of texture into the background. We're then going to move on to the hot air balloon and then also the mountains as well. So my brush size is set to, let's go with 20 just to start with. And I'm just drawing around the edge of the sun like so until we get a nice little bit of the texture in there. Now we're going to leave this layer quite literally as is. And now we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go and drag that above the white glow. And we're going to go to our layer options and we're going to scroll down until we get the option of add, which will really flush out that glow but with the speckled effect. And now let's go to our layers. Let's create a new one. And let's drag that now also underneath the white glow, which will then add in the texture for the rest of the sky as well. So let's make our brush size slightly larger. Let's go to 40%. And all we're going to want to do in a circular motion very lightly is just make our way outwards, but add in most of the texture closer to the sun. And we'll get a few little specks out here, but you don't want to go too far. We want a nice tail off of the glow as well out there. Now that's good with me. The only thing I don't like at the moment is it's a little bit punchy. So we want to lower the opacity of the original glow in the background a little bit more, just to try and sort of dull it down ever so slightly. So let's go back to our layers and we want to find the big glow that we created initially. And as I mentioned, we'll probably adapt it. Let's reduce that size down to 20% now, the opacity. And now what really comes to life is the fact that the speckles are providing most of the glow, but you still get a tiny bit just to outline the edge of the circle, but the speckles themselves are nicely filling in most of the sky there. So now let's go over to our hot air balloon. We're done with the sort of sky now. We can start to add in where the lighting is going to be rebounding onto the balloon itself. So let's go to our layers and scroll up until we find the original big part of the balloon, like so. And let's create a new layer above that and tap on clipping mask. Now I typically always add my sort of lighting and shadows on a new layer. You can add it to the original layer and make sure that that original layer is alpha locked. The only problem I don't like with that is, for example, like we just did in the background, if you separate your layers, you can make adjustments nicely to one individual part of it. If I was to, for example, tap on this and go to alpha lock and then start painting in the speckle effect, if I think that that's too bright and too punchy, I can't reduce that down independently. It would mean that the whole layer has to go down, or I redo it and paint it in again. So if we create a new layer like we did, we can then have complete freedom that if I punch this line out like so, I can go to that layer, I can lower the opacity, but it doesn't affect the original shape. So let's clear that layer now. And now what we want to do is we just want to paint in this soft edge here where that light should be hitting. So my brush size, let's go for something around about 10%. I'm going to start at the bottom and just lightly stroke that top ever so slightly. Now that will give us our initial little bit of lighting. We can then start to flush it out a bit more. So let's reduce the brush size down then to roughly 6% and start a little bit closer to the edge this time and really start to then flush out the color. So I'm now getting more confident with adding the sort of extra lighting in. We're going to really punch out this side. And then what we can do is press really hard and really stroke the edge, but literally just the edge, like so. And now we've got a lovely little bit of lighting coming off from the sun. So let's go to this layer of this object here that we created on the hot air balloon and change it to its actual color. So let's go to the colors and select the second color in the palette at the bottom row and drag and drop that in like so. And we also want to change the background color of our balloon itself as well. So let's go back to our layers and the big part of the balloon, let's just drag that color in as well. And now we've got the correct color for that. So now on the layer at the very top, which is that extra little slither in the middle, let's create a new layer and tap on the option of clipping mask. And then reverting our color back to the cherry pink, we're going to somewhat repeat the process of this side here. So just bringing your brush upwards like so. Stroke that edge first so you can get an idea as to where the shape is. And then slowly bring the colour inwards and mainly focus on the outside edge over here, like so. And then just really just fade that into the centre. And then stroke that edge, and you can really press quite hard and get a lovely little bit of extra light in there. And now we want to also do the other side because the light would somewhat rebound around. So you can go all the way around and then just very lightly stroke in the other edge as well. We don't want to add too much here, otherwise straight away the sort of lighting is incorrect. So I've got a nice soft glow in there. I will stroke then the bottom edge ever so slightly, but then go back in and just touch up here just to make sure we've got a nice clear differentiation between the two sides. So that adds in a little outline of that shape, which is nice because then you can see where it sort of adds in that extra panel on top of the hot air balloon. We're going to repeat this sort of soft glow for the original layer underneath it. So let's go back to our pink for the big part of the balloon. And again, let's just stroke that edge ever so slightly, like so, until we get a nice outline. And let's turn off the drawing guide because at this point we don't need it, and then we can get a nice clear visual of our hot air balloon and that light really bouncing straight into the side of it, and it looks really flush. And now that's looking really sharp. We've got our finished balloon looking really nice, and all the lighting looks really lovely bouncing off of the sun. And let's repeat somewhat to an extent the same process of shading in the right hand side but with our basket. So let's go to our layers and let's start with the front side here. So if I turn that on and off, you can see. First of all, let's drag in the correct colour. So let's go to the second option on the third row, drag and drop that in like so. And let's create a new layer above that and tap on clipping mask. Let's revert back then to the cherry pink and then just stroke this right hand edge ever so slightly. Because again, this side of the basket's not going to get too much light, but we want to just add in enough just so it all nicely fits in with the design. And if I make my brush size really small now, about 2%, I'm just going to stroke this little bit of string as well, just where the light would probably hit. And likewise, just here, just really flush out that edge a bit more. So when I zoom out, that's what I've ended up doing. And as always, like I did above, just stroke the edge here ever so slightly, not so that it's overpowering compared to the right hand side. And let's actually stroke this top edge as well. And if we zoom out, you can really get an idea now for this side and how bright then this other side's going to be. So if we then go to our layers and let's go down to the next one, which is this slightly lighter blue. Again, let's drag in the correct colour. So let's go back to our colours and select the second one on the third row. Drag and drop that in. And then let's create a new layer above that. Tap on that layer and make sure it's a clipping mask. Let's revert back to the cherry pink. And now we're just going to add in the colour the same way. This side can be a lot more coloured in as most of the light would be hitting this side anyway. And what you can do just to make sure that there's a nice differentiation between this side of the basket and this side is stroke this left hand side edge and make sure it's nice and punchy. And then just as I did over here, I'm just going to add some light on the string and maybe a little bit inside. And I'm not going to add too much to this little object in here as well, but just a little bit. So let's go to that layer. Again, let's drag in the correct colour. So the second colour on the third row and just drag it into our little operator inside there. And then let's create a new layer above that person. Tap on that layer and clipping mask. Revert back to the cherry. And then let's just stroke in the edge ever so slightly. Like so. Just a tiny bit. Just trying to outline it more than anything. And when I zoom out, we've got our lovely hot air balloon all done, correct lighting all coming from that right hand side, and we can move on to our mountains. So let's move to the mountains and we can add in then the lighting and also have a real good play with this brush. So let's scroll down our layers and let's find then the back mountain first, so this blue one here. And let's tap on that layer and create a new one above it. And because this layer is already clipped to the rest of the design, we need to create a mask so we can have a separate layer for our highlights, as I mentioned before. So what we need to do is we need to go to this layer here again, Let's tap on that and use the option of select. Now what we've done here is we've selected the shape of it. And then when we go to the layer that we just created above it, we can tap on that and use the option of mask. And straight away you'll see this extra little option come in with the black and white. And what that means is I've just created a mask where if I go to the bottom part, and you know which part you're on, you don't want to be on the mask, you want to be on this part here. When I start to paint, you can see nothing happens over here, but the second I go into the design, it starts to then show the color, because essentially we've made a layer that we can only paint somewhat the same shape as what we just masked it to. So let's go to our brush size and let's go to 10% just to start with. And we want to start looking at where the lighting would come. So it's going to hit this edge. There won't be somewhat here, but there will be a little bit here, this edge here, and then likewise, you know, all the way down the mountain. So let's start off nice and simple that most of the lighting is going to be in the middle here. So I'm just stroking that edge. Also work very lightly with this brush as always, build up the color. You know, start to put in your shapes and then build them up. So I'm not going to add anything here, but I will add a little bit up here, like so. And then I'm going to just do this edge here as well, where most of the light would be bouncing straight onto that side. Likewise, a little bit here too, where that sun would be hitting. And then if I zoom out, we've added it in the main areas it should be in, but we can go ahead and start to add in some extra parts of light as well. So I'm going to increase the brush size to roughly about 20%, and I'm just going to stroke that top edge very lightly all the way up. Now what I've done is just added in some more of the texture, if anything, just really flush out that side. So it was a really light stroke all the way up from top to bottom. And now I want to reduce my brush size down to 5% and start to just add in then the really sharp highlights on either side. So every time the light hits, just like we did with the balloon, you want to flush out the edge where the lighting is really, really punchy and would really sit quite strong on the mountainside. So anything facing the sun. So these two now get a nice big glow to them. This side here would also get a nice big bit of light, and maybe can create some streaks coming off of it. So some sort of lighting lines like that. And then likewise this line here just needs a little bit of lighting too. And this is quite a nice effect where you drag out the lines and you start to sort of cast light and also shadows onto the design. So in hindsight, if you added a couple of peaks here to your design, which I could go back and do, you could create some extra nice little lines like so, and you'd have some peaks for them to all be coming off of. But I'm just using those peaks that I created just to create some sort of lighting lines like so. And you get that lovely little mountain effect to it. So let's just drag this one out a little bit more. Likewise this one too. But you want to be super light with it. Very, very light. If you add it in too much, you'll just go like that and it's not realistic. And let's just draw that out. And that's cool. That's good with me. We've got a lovely little bit of lighting coming off of that area. And what we can then do is on the same layer, we'll just add in some shadow as well. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to select the dark blue, the very first one in the third row. And we're just going to add a shadow in the very base of the mountain. So let's increase our brush size to about 25 or 20% and just stroke in here. And then, so this is like sort of the shadowed area, and just ever so slightly like that, add in a little bit of a shadow. And that just gives a nice little bit of contrast. And now what I also want to do is change the color. Now I gave you these three shapes initially just so we can see some nice differentiation, but just like the hot air balloon, I want to change it to the correct color. So let's go to our mountain original shape, and then let's go to our colors and select the second color on the third row and just drag and drop that into the shape. And now that complete bit of mountain is completely done, and we can progress on to the other ones. You can really see that nice little lighting effect, the streaks coming off as if it's hitting little peaks of rock, and where shadows are maybe cast, where some are just straight off the peaks and down the mountainside. So let's move on to this mountain area over here. So let's go to that shape first, which is this one here. And just like we did before, let's create a new layer above it. And we need to make sure on this layer that we mask to that shape. So let's tap on the shape that we want to create a mask of. Let's tap on it and use the option of select. And then let's go to the layer that we want to add the mask to. tap on that layer and tap on mask. And now we get that nice mask added on top. We want to switch to the actual layer and not the mask. And let's turn off the selection because we're done with that now. And now we can go in and start adding in the same sort of highlights. So let's go to our colors and find the cherry pink. Let's reduce our brush size down to about 10% and add in the foundation lighting first, and then we can really punch it out like we did with the streaks and whatnot. So let's work out where everything's going to hit. So it's coming from this direction, so everything facing that sun is going to hit. So it's going to hit, on my design anyway, this edge here, and it's going to hit especially up here too, but it won't hit in behind there because that's where the shadow would be casted. And straight off the bat, you can see all of this is facing the sun. It's all very uniform, and we've got our lighting in position ready to go. So let's do what we did before though. Let's increase the brush size to about 20% and just stroke the edge ever so slightly, like so, really nice and light, just to add in a lot more of the texture. And then let's go back to our brush size and reduce it down to roughly about 5%, and let's flush out the colors. So let's stroke the edges where it's really going to hit quite hard, like so, and then likewise here. Obviously this depends on what your design will look like, and I'm just flushing out everything that's facing the sun, like so. And then just as I did before, let's just create some nice streaks coming off from the sun and onto that mountain side, making sure that we just follow the same sort of direction as where the sun would be hitting. And let's just add in some more down here, add in those nice little streaks, and where we've got some nice brighter parts we can kind of flush those out a little bit more and be a bit bolder with the sort of light streaks coming off of it. Now that's good with me. I like what we've done there. We've reflected the same sort of process as we did over there. What we now need to do is just add in the shadow that we did as well. So let's go to our colors. Let's switch out to then the first color on the third row. And then continuing on the layer that we're on, just increase our brush size to about 20% again, and just stroke this bottom edge until we start to draw in a little bit of a shadow and add in some contrast in there, like so. And now we've got two lovely mountains with all the light bouncing off of them. We can then progress on to the final one, which is this shape here underneath. Now we want to repeat the process. So let's go to our layers. Let's find the shape that we want, which is this one here. Let's create a new layer above it and tap on that and make sure it's a clipping mask this time. Let's tap on the layer we want to create a mask of, and let's select the shape that we want to. And then let's go to our new layer and add that mask to it. And then just as before, switch to the layer and not the mask, and then tap on select, and we're done. Now at this point you might not be able to see your shape too much because of the shadow we added in, so by all means change the color of the shape if you need to, just so that you can see where it is you're painting. And let's switch out our color again to the cherry pink in the top left hand corner. So as before, we started off with roughly about 10% to start with, where we put in the foundation lightings and where it's going to hit. So mine tails off slightly down here, so I can add in a little bit down in this corner edge, like so. And then I'm going to move over to the right hand side and just see where my sun's hitting. Where would the sun kiss? So it's going to hit there. It's going to hit here too. It very well may just have a little bit in there, and then a little bit there too. So I've sort of added in where I expect the lighting to be, and I know where I can then start to really flush out that lighting. So I'm just going to go in and just punch those out ever so slightly. Just add in some extra bits around it. And now let's go to our brush again and increase the size to 20% and just create that one big streak from top to bottom, like so, just to add in that texture. Now you will start to see that then the curvature of the design comes into play a little bit. You want to be careful not to add in too much, because if you go too close to the edge here, you'll simply outline that there's a circle here, and we want it to fade off so that it's not really a clear definition where the design sort of starts and ends. We know it's practically involved in this circle somewhat. So let's now go in and repeat the process for the really punchy highlights. So reduce it back down to 5%. So we went from 10% to 20 to then back down to 5, where we add in then the really flush colors. And now I'm just going to stroke the edge where I know that the light would hit quite punchy and be very strong. And let's go down, let's also add some in here. I think we get a little bit of light just in this edge. And then most definitely down here, let's just add in some highlights like so. And then let's start to, flush them out again. So let's make them slightly bigger. We can also start to add in then the streaks as well. And again, just be wary of the edge of the design. You don't want to go too far down, because as you can see right here, I've started to outline where the circle design starts and ends. Now over here, it's inevitable that we can't avoid that right on this left-hand edge, but just be wary of it when we are going through and adding in our highlighted lines. And then let's also add some up here too. And again, as always, just press very lightly, build the color up. Don't go in too hard too quickly, and just build that all up. And then I'm just going to go in and just add in some more outline texture here. And the only thing I want to do on this one, because it's the furthest away, I just want to reduce the colors ever so slightly and the opacity of the layer. So go to the layer and let's just lower the opacity down. Let's just lower it to roughly around about 60%. So it's not as punchy as the ones in front, because obviously the light has got a little bit longer to go, but these ones here are right in front of the sun, so they'll be a lot brighter. And then if I put my pen on the screen and go full screen with 4 fingers, we've got our finished design for today's tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. We've got some nice fun brushes to play with there and some lovely little lighting effects. If you enjoyed this tutorial, hit the like button down below. It helps the channel out an awful lot. And as always, if you'd like a Procreate tutorial to follow along with every week, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. As always, huge shout out to my Patreons. I'll throw their names up on the screen now. If you're interested in some exclusive tutorials just to Patreon users, as well as our exclusive Facebook group, hit the link in the description down below and show your support over there. And as always, be sure to share your designs with me on Instagram and TikTok, and make sure to tag me in them so I don't lose them in my feed. And I'll add your designs to my story and give them the credit that they deserve. And also a big shout out to Paperlike if you're interested in getting your own Paperlike screen cover, which is this matte effect that also sounds and feels like paper. I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can grab your own. And that's it for today, and I'll see you in the next one.